The views and opinions expressed on the show are those of the guests or hosts, and not necessarily those of the advertisers, networks, platforms, or stations. Warning that the content of the show may not be suitable for all audiences, and that viewer discretion is advised. The show does not intend to provide medical, legal, or financial advice, and viewers or listeners should consult with a professional before making any decisions based on the information presented.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey, and we are broadcasting from 300 feet deep in an abandoned nuclear missile silo somewhere lost in the post-apocalyptic wastelands of the Dakota Territories. And I am joined, as always, by the paranormal crime-fighting duo Daisy and the Sundance Kid are in the house tonight. They are charging a $10 cover and a 2-drink minimum for those of you who want to see it live here in the silo. But it's been an interesting week. I've been kind of in a philosophical mood this week, and I thought maybe we should visit a few philosophical topics tonight. Going to read a published academic essay that I wrote called Natural Born Killer later in the show that I think many of you will find compelling in its points and arguments. And kind of to kick it off, we've got some interesting, recent paranormal in the news, and that is Bob Lazar's kind of making some waves out there with Jeremy Corbell coming out with new information. So you can check that out on Jeremy Corbell's Weaponized YouTube channel, which is always interesting. And apparently Corbell has a new film coming out called Sleeping Dog. And Sleeping Dog is going to be a very interesting film, really about the UFO phenomenon. So, interesting title, and it looks to be, if you watch the trailer, it looks to be an interesting film. He's a pretty good filmmaker, so we'll have to watch and see how that is going. The markets have been interesting this week, and we do some market talk on this show because of the paranormal aspects of the economy. You're not going to hear that kind of talk on any other radio show, I can guarantee you that. But it was the paranormal world that led us into the areas of cryptocurrency, debasement, fiat currency, debasement trade. And, really, if you take in totality of what the Webbot and the Future Forecasting Group have been saying for a while, you could do a lot worse, in my opinion, and I'm no expert, but you could do a lot worse than if you were a young person and you had guts and a little bit of money. You could do worse than looking into the derivatives futures market on various commodities. I'll lay that out there. There's a lot of opportunity to be had in that area, and that kind of overlays into the crypto markets as well, because they offer futures contracts on cryptocurrencies now. So yeah, you could do a lot worse in my estimation. The fiat currency system is sort of in the death throes of its current existence. And, the argument can and has been made that the fiat currency system in and of itself was designed in order to eventually not be there anymore. It's a debt-based system, and it does so in such a way that over time that debt becomes unpayable in various, in any way. So, we're currently somewhere around 30 trillion in debt, something like that. It would take an insane amount of GDP growth in order for us to ever have a tax base big enough to begin to pay that down. So that leads to inevitable conclusions on an economic scale worldwide. And as I talked about in my last broadcast, I was discussing the fact that it currently doesn't look like the sort of revolution, I guess that's the best word for it, the revolution, economic revolution that a lot of like hardcore crypto people have been hoping for, probably isn't going to happen in that fashion. And the reason is because the powers that be, like companies like BlackRock, were smart enough to realize when they've been had. Right? That's really what it comes down to. They got us. They realized, hey, they got us. And they began to convert everything over to tokenization in such a way that they will still maintain control over a new tokenized system. That's just the way it is. Revolutions are rarely clean, right? Revolutions in history are always a odd mixture of the old and the new. And sometimes that manifests in really horrific kind of ways, right? So in some ways, tokenization is going to provide more of an equal playing field, but it's also not impossible to manipulate. Let's put it that way. And these dudes are master manipulators. That's just the way it is. When they control all of the liquidity, which is what is actually required in the system in order to make the current economic worldwide system work, it all comes down to how much liquidity is being pumped into the system, because that's what makes it all flow. When that liquidity gets cut off, then you see a massive downturn in risk on trade, which is cryptocurrencies and the like. And that's what we saw going back to October the 6th, an event that I've talked about numerous times. That was the greatest deleveraging event in human history. So yeah, it's something to note, right? And the crypto market hasn't been the same since. It has never quite recovered, although it's starting to get its legs underneath it at this stage. There's some very interesting news on the cryptocurrency XRP. Apparently has got a lot of utility. That utility is going to apparently make it quite valuable over a very short period of time. And they're offering futures contracts on XRP right now that allow you to control up to 50,000 XRP at a time with a minimal underlying capital. That kind of opportunity doesn't really present itself all too often in life. Risk, gamble, you better believe it is. Yep, that's exactly what it is. You are rolling the dice, but the dice might be loaded on this one. You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting summer. The summer is going to be extremely interesting in both the cryptocurrency and commodities markets. The war in Iran will probably become a blip on the screen, although it looks like they're still playing games, and who knows who's really in control, and etc. It goes on and on, like that's ad nauseum right now in the mainstream media, but no, it was the paranormal aspects of the webbot, its predictions, cyber prophecies of the economic change taking place, the demise of the fiat currency system, and the adoption of tokenization that led us into covering that aspect of humanity on this show. So that's how all of that fits together. And it's been an interesting ride thus far. I still think we're in the very, very early stages of tokenization and cryptocurrency. It's like less than like 1% of the US population even owns any cryptocurrency. That's crazy. That's just crazy to me. But that's the way it is. And so that will lead to a very steep adoption curve. And the longer it takes for them to start the adoption curve, the steeper it will be in a shorter period of time. That's really the way that works. And so you could see exponential type moves out of cryptocurrencies like XRP. You're talking about, what did Bitcoin went up 69 million% since it was created. So yeah, there's room. There's room for movement with these things, like crazy kind of movement, right? And Eric Trump is out there making some statements about XRP that were very interesting today. I would check those out if I were you. That is a good place to look. Paranormal in the news. The Good General and a number of other missing scientists still have not been found. These are all people that were connected to one another through a series of government contracts to back engineer alien technology. That's really what it comes down to. The General McCaslin was the guy in charge of Wright-Patterson Airfield. The Wright-Patterson Air Base is where they kept the bodies and the debris from Roswell in vaults underneath Hangar 23, not Hangar 18, as is commonly quoted. It's actually Hangar 23, and Hangar 23, the number 23, is very important to all of this, but that's actually a subject for another show. The mystery of the number 23 is a show in and of itself. It's interesting to me that they made the Hangar 23, that they put the bodies in the craft under. So the Good General up and vanishes a few months after a rocket scientist, female, he was connected to, also vanished under the same exact circumstances. Few items were missing, indicating that they may have gone hiking, and that's it. That's the only clue. Nothing else. So, and there's like 5 or 6 of these people now that are missing, that are all scientists or military personnel that must have been connected to the legacy UFO program in some way. This has led me to the speculation that it is X-Protect that is probably at the behind all of this. X-Protect is what ufologists refer to as the embedded intelligence agents / assassins that are employed by the aerospace industry subcontractors who run the SAP or special access programs that actually back engineer alien technology. Those guys are running security for these companies that have subcontractors. It's all extremely compartmentalized, and in some way, shape, or form, they have a license to literally take people out that are a threat to the ultimate disclosure of what it is we possess. And what we possess, apparently, if you listen to the likes of Representative Anna Paulina Luna, and a few others, is that we apparently are in possession of a craft that didn't even originate in this dimension. Think about that. It's a craft that didn't even come from our reality. How do you disclose that without causing all kinds of ontological shock? You really can't. And so there's basically two camps. One camp is saying that humanity can survive ontological shock. And what is ontological shock? Well, that's kind of what the Maya faced when they abandoned their cities, right? It's what numerous civilizations have faced throughout the history of the world. And that's the point when your belief system fails. And so everything built up on top of that belief system, including your society, also fails. The patient can die. And in this case, the patient is human society itself. So you have one camp who's scared to death of that occurring, and at the same time are trying to protect proprietary breakthroughs using alien technology and trying to patent that in such a way that they can profit from it. They employ ex-military special ops guys and gals who run these actual security programs, and a lot of people refer to them as the Mirage Men. That's more of a kind of an indication of Air Force intelligence, but a lot of these people came from Air Force intelligence. Right? They get out of the military, they still have their security clearance, they get employed by a special access program subcontractor, not the government itself, not even Lockheed Martin. It's a subcontractor of Lockheed Martin. And that subcontractor is completely anonymous and unknown because of security reasons. They then can employ these people who are skilled killers, and who, it can be argued, have over time taken out quite a few different ufologists and investigators into this technology. And then you have the other camp who's saying, no, humanity can survive the ontological shock. We need to be upfront. We need to lay it all out there and let the chips fall where they may. That's really where the two camps are. They're embedded in the Pentagon. They are fighting tooth and nail, one against the other, trying to determine the outcome of this whole conspiratorial thing that has occurred. So, we live in the strangest of worlds. So we are on the upswing of the Kali Yuga. That is a multi-thousand-year planetary cycle, and it really is an interesting thing because if you're on the surface of the Earth every so many thousands of years, the trajectory of the Earth actually pops up out of a debris field that's blocking us from galactic center. And we can get bombarded by rays from galactic center. And this is a natural evolutionary process. We are handicapped on this planet because a lot of the time we spend being blocked from the galactic center and from these life-giving, life-evolving energies that normally would be bombarding us and that normally bombard planets that have life on them. This is a natural mechanism within the universe. It's how things are supposed to work, but we're on a kind of an imperfect spot. And every time that you go down the Kali Yuga cycle, you go through dark ages, and then when you come back up out of it and you get bombarded by the rays from galactic center that interact with our sun and thereby interact with our planet, harmonically speaking, then you get golden ages that occur and civilizations like Atlantis. And we are on the upswing now. It is a turbulent time, but we are right on the cusp of what the Webbot referred to as sci-fi world emerges. And when sci-fi world emerges, the economy completely changes at that stage. And it becomes a completely tokenized economy, and the way we think about economics will change completely. So it's going to be a very interesting time to be alive. And, from a paranormal investigation perspective, it's fascinating to watch how the paranormal, through various channels, in this case the webbot and remote viewing groups around the world, has led us into a sort of cascading event of economic change. How strange. What a strange world we live in. But that is the world we live in, right? So, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Sasquatch. Right now is Sasquatch season. And by that I mean this is the time of year when campers begin to go out and start camping, and in particular, people start to go out and pick wild berries in various forested areas. That is a very unwise decision, in my estimation. And I have a lot of data to back that up. There is, according to David Paulides of Missing 411 fame, a cluster of cases that all center around people who were picking wild berries. This, of course, leads us into the inescapable suspicion that they were somehow done in by a Sasquatch because of the competition for the food source, right? So, and that's where Paulides has kind of led the trail time and again, although he's, scared to actually come right out and say, yeah, I think Sasquatch is the culprit. If you take all the Missing 411 cases and you lay them on a map, and that is published and out there on the internet at CanAmMissingProject.com. And you overlay that with a map of all of the most credible 10,000 or so Bigfoot sighting reports, they are a spot-on match. And then you lay those two maps on top of each other, and a third map of the cave systems known and documented on top of those, and they're a spot-on match. Those three things couldn't be a spot-on match unless there was a causal connection between them. That's just the way it is. So it's very, very interesting stuff. There is, some indication in the Missing 411 cases of what I call an interdimensional predator actually taking people. That is a scary, scary scenario, but I believe that some footage of one of these things has been captured, and that footage can be seen on my YouTube channel. It's just under Jack Carey, Cary. And if you look at the video titled Invisible Predators, you're going to see footage taken by a man named Bob Garrett, subsequently disappeared. That's a story in and of itself. But he captured some footage of what appears to be a very predator-like being. And by that, I mean Predator from the movies. Like, this was a cloaked, not Bigfoot, whatever this thing was. It was shimmering just like the creature in the Predator movies. And you can see it clearly on film. I have it looped on there, and a couple of other examples taken from other researchers out there in the field. And when you put them all together, there are indications that we're dealing with something that is a truly unknown, unseen predator in the wilds of North America. And probably it's not Sasquatch. So that leads us to a very interesting place, a little testimony coming out of the wife of one of the best ufologists. He was actually a scientist, Bruce Maccabee, and his wife had an encounter with one of these predator beings, and we'll cover that right after our break.
All right. Good job, Jack.
Thank you.
Yep. I've been watching a lot of Jeff Nadolny's stuff here lately. It's pretty interesting. And then what's the other one? Oh, Red Owl.
Red Owl?
Yeah, Red Owl is the name of the YouTube channel. And it's pretty interesting. They talk about stuff that's in caves, like giant man-eating worms.
Wow.
To like these shadow figures.
Like the Djinn.
Kinda, yeah. Some of the stuff that they were going over and talking about, it sounded like Djinn, but it really group. These are in groups in certain areas of certain national parks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. But Jeff usually talks about stuff like Dogman and Bigfoot. He's had some
nice.
really, really weird stuff coming up in there.
Nice.
Yeah. In fact, he's interviewed like a hunter, like a government contractor he had on with him, that hunts Dogman. So I don't know all about that, but, hey, it wouldn't surprise me if, some of them are tagged. And the guy said that, oh yeah, they used them in like Africa. I'm like, okay.
Jeez.
That's
crazy.
Like 3 or 4 of them, part of his unit that went into some Africa thing that, I guess it recently. But it's weird stuff, man.
Cool. Well,
yeah.
This is going to get very, very philosophical very fast here in a little bit. So,
cool.
Prepare thyself. We're going to drop a philosophy bomb.
Have you had any winged cryptid sightings sent to you lately?
Not so far this season. I haven't had anything, although I do. This is such a sparsely populated state. I mean, Denver and its suburbs had more people than this entire state.
Yeah.
That just is crazy to me, but and this is a big state, so, and there's all kinds of paranormal stuff happening here, but there's 830,000 people, so.
Well, it seems to be about this time of year is when I've had my sightings of pterosaur type creatures.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked.
That's my dream, is to get a good sighting of a real pterosaur. I would love that, boy. That would be something.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I saw a pair once, and then one really low. I told you all about that one. It was
yeah. That is some crazy stuff.
30 seconds, and we're back on radio side. Yeah, and every time I go through that area, I always get the feeling that a Bigfoot or a dog man's gonna cross the road there too one day. I'm coming through. I'm like, I don't know why, but I always got it. Just has weird feeling in that area. Here's your countdown, Jack. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you're back live and on the radio side right now.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey. I've got a face for milk cartons and a voice for smell-o-vision, and tonight we're talking about the predator beings that apparently are in our forest. You can see that footage on my YouTube channel, as I mentioned. And Dr. Bruce Maccabee's wife had a run-in with one of these creatures, and she got a snapshot of the run-in. And he was able to filter it in such a way that he could ascertain that this thing was using some kind of light reflective technology in order to do what it was doing, to make itself invisible. The only thing they got was like this crazy arm. Like you can totally see the arm of this thing, whatever it is. So that happened on their property. It happened while she was deer hunting up in her deer stand on their own property. A 10-acre property that butts up to a forest. I guess my question is, what are the odds that the wife of a prominent ufologist has a run-in with one of these predator creatures on their very own property, and it not be related in some way, shape, or form to Dr. Bruce Maccabee's work on ufology? How is that possible? That defies the laws of probability in my estimation, and so I think there must be some weird causal connection between the two. This is the strange world that I live in. So take a look at that and see what you guys think. So this week's been a philosophical week. It's been a week where I was reminded of the mystery of death, and it is the ultimate rabbit hole, right? I mean, when you think about rabbit holes, the mystery of death is the ultimate mystery. It doesn't appear as though death is the end of existence, only in this particular form, perhaps. So very, very interesting. But I thought this would be a opportune moment to read an academic essay that has a philosophical view that you might find compelling. And I wrote this when I was at the Metro State University of Denver. It was published by them and actually entered into a competition. So a few years ago, this is Natural Born Killer, by the way, by Jack Carey. A few years ago, I went through something of a spiritual, if not religious, conversion. This wasn't the typical case of a wandering soul finding a belief system that provided support and comfort. Rather, it was a horrific experience. The weirdest part of this enlightenment is the fact that it was all facilitated by a nature documentary. I had, for a while, been contemplating the larger picture of the universe and my place within it. In fact, this contemplation had really become all-consuming, and most of my time was spent poring over dusty old tomes of arcane knowledge, looking for something I couldn't quite define. I had recently become overwhelmingly disillusioned with the established religions of our day. They all, without exclusion, seem rife with hypocrisy and corruption, hollowed-out versions of what they were meant to be. In my mind, they now only exist to parasitically survive off the fears and hopes of the people who make up my species. It all seems like simple physics, really. A body in motion tends to stay in motion, and those belief systems have been in motion for a very long time. They now barrel down the tracks in such a fashion that I am often left wondering what mad engineer must be at the helm. One afternoon during this turbulent period, I was lazily seated in front of the television, and suddenly a nature documentary began. I reached for the remote control, but before I could change the channel, these guys got their hook into me with a fantastic title. The name of the documentary was The Silent Killers of Monterey Bay. The subject of the piece was a pod of killer whales that were currently living in Monterey Bay outside San Francisco. The film starts with the narrator explaining that the pod is hunting and that they intend to capture this event on film and otherwise document the activity of the whales. The camera pans in on a lone seal that has become the object of the hunt. The seal spots the pod and knows that real trouble has just taken a liking to him. In a completely unexpected move, the seal swims directly over to the boat holding the film crew. The boat crew is understandably surprised and a little shocked by this. The pod of killer whales, too scared of the people and the boat, keep their distance, and the seal appears safe. He was a crafty bastard, that seal. At this moment, the narrator comes back on camera and says that in moments like these, they don't like to interfere with the workings of Mother Nature. Quote, "We're required to have a hands-off approach," he said into the lens. Just about then, the engine of the boat started up and began to gurgle and hum. The boat slowly jolted forward and then began to pick up speed. The seal, crafty little guy that he was, knew that if the boat left, he was going to be dead meat. The killer whales began to pull out their toothpicks. The seal, desperate and afraid, began to pursue the boat with all of its might and was doing a really fine job, I might add. The boat crew realized what was happening. They began to pick up more speed in an attempt to leave the seal behind. The seal, overwhelmed with fright, began to jump out of the water and into the boat. Every time it jumped out of the water, it let out a blood-curdling scream. I was caught mesmerized by what I was witnessing. Finally, the boat began to leave the poor seal behind. Farther and farther away it fell as exhaustion took over. Those whales didn't take long. I soon discovered just how aptly named they are. They must have hit that seal going full steam, ripping its flesh and crushing its neck bone into 1,000 tiny pieces. When these guys kill something, they aren't content to just eat it. They make a game of it, tossing the poor creature to and fro like a beach ball at a rock concert. Just about the time that my horror turned into anger and I began to wish ill upon the boat crew, narrator, producer, and the rest of their ilk, a voice came on the screen. It was the voice of the narrator, and he says, "Now I know that this must seem like what this must seem like, and although all of you out there watching might be angered and repulsed by what just happened, there is something you don't know. That pod of whales had a baby with it, and it hadn't eaten in over 2 weeks. In fact, it was starving to death. The death of the seal, although savage to our way of thinking, means life for that baby whale." Just at this instant, a life-changing thing happened. I saw a flash of light like a bomb go off in my mind. I felt like I was being hit with a lightning bolt. I must have blacked out because I woke up on the floor. Only a few moments had passed, but my head was swimming. I gathered myself together and went outside with my dogs for a couple of hours to clear my head. That night before bed, I was irresistibly drawn again to the same nature channel. It was like I had been given a dose of truth serum, and now I had a heroin-like grip on my soul. That night's feature documentary was on Japanese hornets. As far as bugs go, the Japanese hornet is just about as nasty as they come. They can spray acid from their tails and sense the carbon dioxide put out by a prey's breath or eye heat. Many a person has been blinded by these creatures. Once they have you blinded in the jungle, they emit an odor that draws the rest of the hive to you. Only a few stings render enough poison to completely down a victim. The pain apparently more than most humans can bear. The film crew had to wear tough suits covering their entire bodies in order to shoot the documentary. These hornets make their living by attacking honeybee colonies. The documentary crew was able to film only 30 Japanese hornets, killing every one of 30,000 honeybees in a single colony in a single attack. It was death wholesale. These things were lopping off heads with their pincers and spraying acid all over those bees, melting 100 at a time. When the killing was done, they took all of the bees' larvae, flew it back to their own nest, and fed it to their young. As I lay in bed watching this, my skin crawled. I felt like I stood on the precipice of a great ravine and was about to be shoved in. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I left the television off. I went into the room where I store all of my books, looking for a diversion from the question in my mind, standing just off stage. I picked up a book I had found at a used bookshop by a man named Aleister Crowley. I didn't know much about the man other than most of the world's religions considered him to be the wickedest man who ever lived. With a title like that, coming from them, I knew whatever he had to say must be good. I randomly flipped through the book, stopping on a section where Crowley supposedly had channeled the Egyptian goddess Nuit. She was the Egyptians' idea and embodiment of the totality of the universe. In this channeled writing, the goddess Nuit is supposedly speaking through Crowley and says, "I am divided for love's sake, for the chance of union." My mind went tumbling again. That was the question, really, that had been lurking in the shadows, ready to pounce. If love exists, and it does, how can it exist in a place of such brutality? How can it exist if all of nature is a slaughterhouse? After the two films I had watched, it became abundantly clear that in order to perpetuate your own consciousness stream, or life, you have to be adept at freeing up other life forms from theirs. We are, all of us, vampires. Consider it a zero-sum game. Whatever life you have or enjoy was put there by another life form that no longer exists because of it. A transaction took place at that moment. You absorbed its energy. Predator and prey became one. Is that what Nuit meant? Vegetarians may think they have a pass on such brutality, but they are only ignorant of the facts. Recently, a prestigious university conducted a series of experiments on plants. In one experiment, they put a new plant in a container and stuck a match next to it and lit the match. The fire from the match, of course, damaged the plant. They then took an identical plant and placed it next to the first and placed an unlit match next to it. The second plant grew at a 90-degree angle away from the unlit match. This means, of course, that the plants are conscious, and not only that, they appear to communicate. Research is ongoing, but vegetarians may be the biggest killers of all. All of this was leading me to an inescapable conclusion. If love can exist alongside brutality, then it must surely all be one creature, feeding, fighting, and loving itself in an endless exploration of self-love. It is only human perception which is terminally flawed, inexplicably unable to accept this purest of truths. Nuit's or Crowley's words rang in my head. I am divided for love's sake, for the chance of union. Had God split itself up into countless life forms in order to create the principle of love through union? Wasn't the predator and prey scenario of our existence just another form of union? I had to get out. I needed air. I decided to go to the grocery store and pick up a few items that we needed for that night's dinner. Just at the stoplight, a block or two from my home, I began to hear sirens. They were faint at first, and then slowly they got louder and louder till they were blazing in my ears. I saw a black car going at least 80 miles an hour being pursued by a police car. They were going so fast it all seemed a blur and were gone in just a few seconds, the siren slowly fading again. I wondered if the drivers knew that they were the same creature, and so in effect one chasing the other was like a dog chasing its tail. I don't even remember the rest of the drive to the store. Once there, I took a handcart and wandered my way over to the meat department. There before me in homogenized glory were the hunks of animal flesh wrapped in plastic that I had come to depend on for my existence. I loaded up what I needed and headed for the door. Standing in line, Nuit's words hit me again. This time I even heard it in a female voice inside my head. I am divided for love's sake, for the chance of union. Her words rang through me as she spoke. I couldn't go through with it. For some unknown reason, I couldn't buy the meat. The deal seemed too shady. I was getting off too easy. I placed the basket on the ground in front of me and turned to walk out. The others in line only stared in a sheepish manner as I walked out the door. That night, as I drifted off to sleep, a childhood memory long forgotten crept back into my mind. At the age of 7, I begged, pleaded, and cajoled my parents enough that they finally purchased me the BB gun I so desperately desired. It was a hot summer day when I took it out of the box. I filled it with BB pellets and began shooting the target it came with. After a few hours of that, I grew bored and I began looking for other targets. I spotted a blue jay on a telephone wire and coldly took aim. I don't remember pulling the trigger, but I remember how hard it hit the ground. My mother, who had been sunbathing at the time, looked up from her book just as it happened and began screaming at me. We both ran over to the bird. Blood was pouring from its beak, and a hole now resided where an eye had once been. A wave of anguish swept over me. I began to weep uncontrollably. My mother began to cry too, not saying a word. I can still hear my father's voice from across the yard, calling us from within some long, dark tunnel. You guys quit messing around and come and get your cheeseburgers. The end. And that kind of leads us into the mystery of death itself, right? Because life is sort of predatory. And what is death itself? Is it just a phase transition into another dimension? It's possible. It leads us into ghost theory, right? And an anomaly I noticed. First of all, I grew up in a haunted antebellum mansion in southern Oklahoma. It was haunted as could be. There were full-on black, figures moving across the house, dishes being smashed in the middle of the night, the whole thing. So my whole childhood was full of that. And so ghosts, as for me as a paranormal investigator, were never a mystery. I knew they existed. The real question is, why do they exist? Do we live in a reality where there is just some kind of moth trap mechanism by which some people get stuck in a semi-existent way in this reality, and we call them ghosts? Or is there something else at work there? Because the anomaly when it comes to ghost theory is called the caveman ghost anomaly, right? When was the last time that you saw somebody on a paranormal documentary, television show, paranormal caught on camera, what have you, of a caveman ghost? They're just not there. Are we to believe that ghosts didn't occur in the ancient past? And that somehow it's a modern day occurrence? Do ghosts just fade over time and eventually make that transition? These are all open questions I don't pretend to have the answers to. But it's clear from a mountain of evidence that some people not only survive death, but can interact with this reality in that other state. We call them ghosts, what have you. They're just people. Or should we say former people? I don't know. You know, what is the etiquette? What is ghost etiquette? I'm going to write a book called Ghost Etiquette. And, you know, that really kind of leads us back around to this whole idea of alien technology. And I say that because a lot of the scientists who are involved with the UFO program claim that there's something spiritual that we would describe as spiritual. But what is that really? Is that just another dimensional move of some kind? I don't know. But like my essay says, a brutality can exist alongside the principle of love in this universe, and clearly it does. Is it our human perception which is flawed and not creation itself? Could it be that we just simply aren't seeing the fact that death is just a simple transition and nothing to be feared, and so the predator and prey scenario of our existence really isn't all of that dramatic that it seems to us to be? I don't know the answer to that either. But these are good questions to ask ourselves. And, you know, in the world of ghost research and paranormal research, it's important to know that over time, technology will gain ground with this mystery. Technology has a way of gaining ground with all mysteries over time. And this is no different. So, you know, we are on the cusp of artificial intelligence actually changing medicine as we understand it. A lot of scientists are claiming that they are on the cusp of curing cancer, etc., extending life to at least 120 healthy years, that kind of a thing. So you are seeing the sort of marriage of high technology with human lifespan and existence in a way that's going to sort of, you know, really revolutionize the future of humanity if it's not interrupted unexpectedly in some way. And could it be that there is something we're not quite understanding about the UFO phenomenon beyond this aspect of an actual technology being in our possession from another dimension? Could it be that because death is another dimension, that there is somehow a connection between these things? I don't know. But a lot of researchers are beginning to ask those questions because of this little thing that was discovered called the hitchhiker effect. And the hitchhiker effect is the fact that people involved with ufology for long periods of time end up experiencing other kinds of paranormal activity that really logically shouldn't have a relationship to UFO mystery. I'm talking about, like, you know, people involved with the UFO program going home and experiencing poltergeist activity and haunting activity and light orbs following them and cryptid animal activity even. I mean, that kind of stuff, how is it connected to their research into alien technology if there's not something weirdly interdimensional about it? And, you know, all of that plays into the battle that's taking place for disclosure. And you guys will have to join me next week. We will jump down another rabbit hole and we will explore the architecture of it. And until then, I will see you on the radio.